Welcome to American Catechism by Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 32, maybe, and a movie review, number 8, coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas, where it is 68 degrees on November 12th, 2025. American Catechism is a systematic Americanology that is set out to study and discuss American history, politics, theology, and culture with an occasional whiskey. Part of this show is to showcase movies that are classics or that point to an important theme in our history. We have recently celebrated the United States Marine Corps 250th birthday and then Veterans Day, so now we want to look at a classic World War II movie that points to the heroics of the Marines on Guadalcanal in the South Pacific. So today, we shall be reviewing Flying Leathernecks, starring John Wayne. And along the way, I'll be sipping on a whiskey from Hotel Tango, rye ready to drink. This is based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and the founder owner is one each Travis Barnes, a Marine Recon veteran. And we'll be sipping this whiskey in a Manhattan cocktail out of a Marine Corps glass. The fact that it's called a perfect Manhattan. Although I'm not an overly big fan of the Manhattan cocktail, actually, but this is okay. All right, just the facts about the movie here. This 1951 movie was produced by Howard Hughes and Edmund Granger, directed by Nicholas Ray, story by Kenneth Gamet, screenplay by James Edward Grant, music by Roy Webb, starring John Wayne, filmed in Technicolor, 102 minutes. The plot: Major Dan Kirby, John Wayne, comes to Guadalcanal to take over VMF 247, that is a Marine Corps fighter squadron, when the unit was expecting Captain Carl Griffin to take over. Kirby is both very strict by the book, but also innovative in the face of battle. And this creates a lot of personal conflicts and drama. The harsh wartime conditions lead to tough choices and human losses. The movie really is a lesson in leadership and the price of war. My score for this movie was a 90. Letter grade for enjoyability and importance, solid A. My recommendation: I think this movie would be great for all active duty Marines and veterans to watch. And any American who is patriotic, proud of their country, any John Wayne fan, obviously. If you're studying World War II history, this is based on some historical truth. So let's get to the details now. First of all, historical accuracy. The movie is loosely based on the story of Captain John L. Smith of VMF 223 on Guadalcanal, who shot down 19 Japanese planes while leading the Cactus Air Force. He was awarded the Medal of Honor by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The Marine squadron flew F-4F Wildcat fighters against the Japanese bombers and Zero fighters that were constantly supporting the Japanese fleet and ground troops in the long campaign on Guadalcanal. And the 223rd also pioneered the close air support role for the Marines on the ground. As in the movie, Smith was rotated back to Washington, D.C. for a while and then came back out to the Pacific to later fight in the Philippines. But in the movie, John Wayne comes back to fight on Iwo Jima. So for historical accuracy, 19 of 20, because it is based on a true story and they do a pretty good job of it. Secondly, production background. Howard Hughes, himself a pilot and wealthy aviation enthusiast, and he founded an aircraft company, bankrolled this production and chose to make the film in Technicolor, even utilizing some World War II gun camera footage that was in color. Filming began at Camp Pendleton, California, in November 1950, while the Korean War was going on, and the Marines were about to get caught by the Chinese at the Chosin Reservoir. The aircraft used for the movie were the F-6 Hellcats, because there were no more F4F Wildcats available. They had been obsolete and scrapped. The F6, though, looks vaguely similar, or pretty similar, it's just bigger. And the F6 was still being used in training and Naval Reserve units. The film also utilized the Vought F4U Corsair, which was then currently being used by the Marines in Korea at the time. There was one accident in filming that occurred when a B-25 that was being used for the film crew flying alongside the aircraft was caught in a premature explosion on the ground. The B-25 was seriously damaged but managed to land safely. The United States Marine Corps and the U.S. Navy both cooperated in the making of this film. 5 out of 5 points for production background. Set, scenery, and wardrobe. At times, the wardrobe did look authentic. At other times, maybe not. It seems that Major Kirby frequently wore a different uniform than his fellow pilots, and I'm not sure why. Because Kirby was so strict, yet he's frequently seen with his shirt unbuttoned, which seemed out of character, though fitting for the climate, because Guadalcanal was definitely a hot, moist climate. Most of the pilots were wearing Colt 1911 ACP pistols, but Kirby and Griff, Griff was the XO, they were wearing revolvers, and I'm not sure why the difference there. I do know that the United States Air Force continued issuing revolvers well into the 1980s, at least. I personally saw that. Not sure about the Marine Corps, though. The scenery from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal certainly looked authentic. The real place was muddy, dusty, tropical, a mess. It was chaotic. So, it all looked pretty close to what I've read. 8 out of 10 points for set, scenery, and wardrobe. Music. Obviously, the Marine Corps hymn is played throughout the movie from start to finish. It does merge with other tunes at times, but clearly the Marine hymn is the main theme throughout. All the other music seemed to tie in with that. Perhaps it was overdone a tad. 13 out of 15, though. Story and plot. The story in the movie does a fair job of following the true story of Captain and then Major John Smith of VMF 223, the Marine pilot and commander that the movie is portraying. The plot centers around the conflict between the commander and the XO, Captain Griffin, who the unit anticipated taking over as squadron commander, but then was supplanted by Kirby. And so Dan Kirby, the CO, has a different leadership style than Griffin, and a different leadership style than the unit was used to. So Kirby takes over VMF 247, the Wildcats, and immediately sees that they are undisciplined and immature, which is a deadly fault during wartime. And so he really blames the XO, Griff, for this failure, and throughout the movie is pushing and dragging Griff to be the kind of brutal leader the situation in war calls for. So the movie does portray the brutal realities of war as character after character is killed in combat. The plot includes some scenes from the home front as Kirby is rotated back to the States briefly, and then throughout the movie he has to write letters home to the families of the men who died under his command. And so that's a pretty gripping scene or two there. The climax of the movie is when Griff is promoted upon Kirby's recommendation, because Griff had made the appropriate changes in his character and leadership style, and so Kirby recommended him for the job of CO, because now he thinks he's cold-blooded enough to send his men in to die. So the plot follows a pattern actually in movies that I've seen recently, with In Harm's Way and A Gathering of Eagles, where leaders have to make hard, brutal decisions that cause real people real harm in order to accomplish the mission. War and preparing for war are not fun and games. 18 out of 20 for the story and plot. Acting. The acting was quite strong in the movie, from the young pilots to Robert Ryan playing Griff and John Wayne playing Kirby. Pilots in World War II were often very young, 20, 21, 22 years old, and they acted like it. Cockiness is a real thing amongst pilots. When a hard-charging disciplinarian leader steps in after a more relaxed commander, he will be despised. The young pilots communicated that quite well. The attitude of just trying to survive on Guadalcanal also seems realistic. It was a pretty grim situation. Kirby, as the hardened veteran who had also fought at the Battle of Midway, revealed to Griff the loneliness of being a commander as he makes hard decisions that send men out to die. The scenes at home with Kirby's wife, played by Janice Carter, and his son, Gordon Gerbert, added a touch of warmth as well as realism to the drama. So 14 out of 15 for the acting. Special effects. The movie did make use of genuine World War II gun camera film, and I've seen a lot of that. When I was in Air Force Junior ROTC in high school, we watched a lot of gun camera film. And it can be exciting and it can be very sobering. U.S. Navy used F-6 Hellcat fighters to help film the movie since there were no F-4Fs remaining. And the explosions and strafing runs on the airfield, sadly, were typically fake from Hollywood. Though overall, the movie had good effort. You know, there are just a few special effects problems that are typical for military movies from Hollywood. So 8 out of 10 for special effects. Bonus points, 5 out of 5, because this is based on a true story. It was quite well done, with the full cooperation of the Navy and the Marine Corps. And John Wayne was really, this is one of the best performances, I think, by John Wayne. Giving me a total score of 90 points. A letter grade for enjoyability and importance, a solid A. Analysis and recommendation. I think this is going to be one of my top favorite John Wayne movies. I can't believe that I've never watched this. Really, I didn't see this as a kid, and I'm just now watching it. Oh well. I think this is also going to be probably in my top 20% favorite World War II movies. Because it's based on historical figures, Battle of Guadalcanal. Now, they did change all the names of the people and the units, and they never really talked much about the actual island itself. It was a narrowly focused movie on this unit and the leadership challenges. Okay, so it didn't deal with the broader battles on Guadalcanal. So it's focused on just the lead characters and their leadership development. In that sense, it fits nicely with the other movies that I've reviewed lately, like, again, In Harm's Way, Gathering of Eagles, or even going further back, I did a review a few years ago of 12 O'Clock High. I certainly consider this to be an important film that tells a heroic story of the Marines in World War II. And I think it should be viewed by active duty Marines and veterans and all those patriotic Americans who are tired of what Hollywood seems to be producing today, for the most part. This would be, I think, particularly good also for RTC cadets in college. So, all right, coming up soon, gonna try to do another movie review sometime soon, In a Lonely Place with Humphrey Bogart. Switching up genres, this is going to be a film noir. And then I think I'll get back to my Scotch competition, where I've got some famous grouse family competition going on. So until then, this is Stab the Dragon and American Catechism out here.